Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining. Today is Thursday, March 28th, and it's a pleasure to have you here. It's our 24th episode of Compass Games Live. Tonight we're going to be doing two special things. We have a designer interview, and then we'll follow up and close our session tonight with a pre-order game announcement. So again, it's a pleasure to have you here. For those that are on the Zoom platform, I would welcome your questions tonight of the designer that we have, etc. So you'll see in your interface, you'll see some buttons at the bottom. There's a Q&A link you can select, or there's also a chat option. So you can use either of those to post your questions or any comments you want to make, and it'll be great to have a much interactive session as we can tonight. So again, it's a pleasure to have you. The last time we spoke was about 3 weeks ago. So let's go ahead and get caught up on some things as far as the Compass schedule. So we're going to go ahead and look at that right now. So let's take a quick look. Again, we're looking at our upcoming release schedule. And since we spoke about 3 weeks ago for our 23rd episode, there's been a few changes. So if we look at the left-hand column, we can see down the middle there's recent releases. So Vietnam Rumor of War was our most recent game release. So that is using the operational scale system. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit here in a moment. But again, that game shipped. A lot of people have received it already. It's the second game in the operational scale system, the first one being Korea. So again, Korea Fire and Ice was the first release for operational scale system, and Vietnam Rumor of War is the second release. So again, that's something we're going to get to in a moment. As far as what's upcoming from Compass, as you can see from the schedule, tomorrow, and we're right on schedule. So tomorrow we'll be shipping out Zeppelin Raider, Imperial German Naval Airship. So that's something I do want to talk about with you guys tonight at length. We'll spend some time on that, since that's our next release that's shipping starting tomorrow. And then as you can see from our schedule, we have one game scheduled for April. We recently updated the schedule around March 19th, so everything's pretty current. And then you also see Fortress Europa, we pushed back to May. I'll give you an update on that shortly. We've got everything done now, except for the rules booklet is going to be worked on now. So that's going to be starting at this moment, and that's the last component to basically get finished and then delivered to the printer. So that one's not far off at all, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a second. And then you can see here, I'm sorry, I got a little message there about Facebook not working, of course, unfortunately. And then you can see the rest of the schedule. We've got Paper Wars, issue 92, Bar-Lev, Company Scale System, The Little Lamb. And then we do put a big focus as well on doing new editions, designer signature edition releases of past classic games, or games that have done quite well in the past. So that's the Korean War from Joe Bukowski. And then from Gregory Smith, we have Interceptor Ace. That rounds out our schedule through mid-July. So again, if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I'll be happy to take any questions you have. First thing I'd like to do, however, tonight is, since we are so close to Fortress Europa being finished, as I mentioned, just the rules are left to do. I'd like to share with you just real quickly a little bit about that game. So again, this is the classic John Edwards design game. We actually did another game by John Edwards, which was the African campaign. So you can see here we have Fortress Europa. You can see the cover that we're going to have for the game. It's the final cover. So again, this is a very well-known title, especially the Avalon Hill edition of the game. It's definitely a very well-known release. So we've been hard at work on it. I've shown in previous sessions, I've talked about the map. It doesn't measure a full, it's two full-size maps, but there's quite a bit overlap on them. So actually it's not going to be 44 inches wide. It's going to be a little less than that, just to give you an idea of the overall dimensions of the map. So there is a little bit of overlap on the map, but as you can see, they're larger hexes to accommodate the larger counters. And although you see a lot of charts and tables on the map, what we like to do with the Designer Signature Edition is give options to the players. So a lot of the charts and tables you see, they are all reproduced on separate player aid cards, with the exception of the game turn record track. That is something that is on the map. It's the closest thing to the hex grid on the right. You can see it running north-south along the right edge of the map on the east side. But all the other tables that you see here These are all on player aid cards, so I don't want you to have to squint over and bend over the table to play the game and look at all these charts and tables. If you have great eyesight, wonderful, it's there as a convenience, but we've also got player aid cards as an option. So let's just talk about that for a moment, and then again, the components, how they round out. It's right here. It's 2 map sheets. You can see it measures 40 by 34. So it takes about 4 inches off as far as how they're oriented, as I mentioned. So instead of 44 inches wide, it's 40 inches wide. Again, it's got those 5/8 inch counters, very nice size. And then Randy Heller, was the official answer man to Avalon Hill for about 15, 20 years for the actual game, Avalon Hill edition. He's been the game developer, so he's worked really hard on the game. He knows the game, of course, inside out because he's been responsible for it for Avalon Hill, giving support for the game for over 20 years and all the tournaments, etc. So again, great support for the game overall. So let's take a quick peek, if we may, just at some of the components I'd like to share with you. So we're going to do that now. So we'll start with I thought we'd start with the initial game setup card. So it gives you also an idea what the counter sheet looks like. We have some counter sheets posted on the website already. But just to give you an idea of the quality of the setup sheets, these are 8.5 by 11 cards. We've got the German initial setup. We've got some mnemonics here and some helpful notes about how setup works. So that's something we always pay attention to. This is information that you're normally not going to come across in these original editions. We really focus on finding out how can we add additional information for these games to make them more user-friendly. So you see a lot of notes and things like that we add to player aids. Any way we can help the gamers whatsoever. So you can see that's a German initial setup. Same thing here. Now we've got the German arrival schedule. So you can see we've got that here as well. And we've got some additional, again, as reminders to help players out, which is new to this edition. And you got the Panzer Reserve rules here, which it would be nice to have it right here when you're looking at the arrival schedule, because that's where those units are. So again, we're really trying to pay careful attention to helping everybody out to make this a much more enjoyable experience when you're playing the game if you've played it before. And then here's the German arrival schedule 2 of 2. You've also got a Panzer Reserve holding box, and again, more information about the military districts. And near the end of the war, of course, we've got the Volkssturm troops and formations, and that's talked about here at the bottom. So again, we're trying to meld those helpful notes and play tips here on the cards, even though they're also in the rules booklet as well. So that's the German arrival schedule, and then of course we have scenarios. So we have the Battle of the Bulge. So we have a specific scenario covering the Battle of the Bulge. So you can see we've got the scenarios set up for the Germans for there. And then we go to the full campaign game. Now we go to the Allied player. So here's all the Allied display cards for the game, whether it's for the campaign or reinforcements for the campaign or for the Battle of the Bulge scenario. So here's the Allied initial game setup, just like we saw for the Germans. Here's the arrival schedule with some notes again, talking about specific units like the British 79th Armored Substitute counters that it talks about, and also something about the Americans. And then here's that Battle of the Bulge scenario that's offered separately. So you get a separate dedicated display for that. So again, a lot of it, again, if you compare this to the original editions of the game, and again, this is where Randy Heller really adds so much value to this project. He really knows inside out how to help players with helpful mnemonics for play. I want to share with you also, as I mentioned, I showed you the game map. I know you can read it on the map because it was so small, but just going there for a moment, if I go back to the game map here just for a second. So again, you've got all these charts and tables along the east side, and all these charts and tables are, of course, they're duplicated, so there's no difference between whether you're looking on the map or the player aid card, so we made sure we didn't make any errors to update. Anytime we need to update it, we updated this information in both places. So if we go back now to the player aid cards, yes, we have those same tables here on a player aid card. So combat results, paragroup drop table, weather chart, river crossing. There's 2 sets for each player. So each player, they're double-sided. So there's a set of 2. The invasion sequence can actually happen up to twice in the campaign game. So we've provided, and this is for, I think this is for the first time where we've organized this to make this nice, is to have a separate card or information about the invasion sequence. So when you have to deal with that in the game up to 2 times, you've got the full sequence here you can reference. And again, the movement allowance chart, including for second impulse, all that information which was on the game map as well is also faithfully recreated here on 2 sets of duplicate player aid cards for both players. So I hope that's something you see, the quality of the components. There's also some special player aid cards, one for the German player and one for the Allies. That helps also with facilitating play, like the replacement chart and tracks, and German tactical air availability. And then we've got the Allies, of course, here as well, with some nice mnemonics and reminders and notes about replacements themselves, so you don't have to hunt for it again in the rules. So I hope when you take a step back and look at this, you realize the amount of care and attention when we do a game with a strong reputation that a lot of people have strong emotional attachments to, having played Fortress Europa for many, many, many years. We don't want to screw it up. We want to make it a better game experience overall. So a lot of attention goes into the level of detail of the game. The last thing I want to share with you, I think, is a really nice treat. I think it shows, hopefully we'll get you excited about some of the quality of the game, of what's to come, as we have a nice air mission chart as well. Really well done by Bruce Urians, the graphic artist. And again, this is something that's nicely and newly added to enhance the game experience for Fortress Europa. So I know it's been played a hell of a lot in the past by a lot of people, but we really hope this edition is just gonna be wonderful for everybody. And if you haven't pre-ordered this game yet, I hope, just from seeing the attention, the level of detail we put into all these new player aid cards, and how the map's going to look with the larger counters, etc., and the new organization of the rules, which takes in, again, all that errata and clarifications that Randy Heller has been dealing with for 15, 20 years. I'm really excited about what Fortress Europa is going to be. It's going to be a fantastic, fantastic release. So please, again, look for Fortress Europa. Again, it's coming very soon. Everything's done. Literally everything is done and signed off on. I'm just starting work now to get the rules draft together, and that takes a few weeks to get it right, obviously, because that careful attention has to go into that, and then we go into final layout of the rules with all the illustrations and examples of play that you're used to seeing from Compass for these designer signature edition releases. So I hope that's a thumbs up from people. So anybody that's on the Zoom network that's joining, I hope you like what you see for Fortress Europa. We're really excited about it. So the next thing I want to do is I want to invite our designer interview. Let's go ahead and get started with that. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to bring in someone here. So let me go ahead and do that now. And we will welcome somebody who's actually joined us before. So you will see him here in a moment. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second, too, just so we can say hi. So,
hey.
And there you are.
Hey,
hi,
John.
Greg.
Nice to be here.
Nice to see you, Greg. It's a pleasure to have you here very much. And
I didn't want to give anything away, so I dressed with some neutral clothing so no one could tell.
Look at that, a Zeppelin. Why would we have a Zeppelin on your shirt? I wonder why. I'm not sure. Well, I guess we'll have to do a formal introduction to do this right. So I want to introduce Gregory M. Smith to everybody. Gregory, I hope you all might be familiar with Greg's work already. He's done quite a few designs already. The Hunters, Silent Victory, those are published under a Constant Press label through GMT Games. And we've got the Hunted still coming as well. That's actually gone to the printers, or going to the printers in real time now, which is the later stages of the Hunters. So all these are solitaire games, so you see sort of a recurring theme, right? And but you've also partnered with some people. Some people really took to your games, Greg. So I know, for example, Raiders of the Deep.
Ian Cooper, just a absolute brilliant researcher and attention to detail guy. And he was absolutely the right guy to do Raiders of the Deep.
Yeah, and so it's pretty intense for having a World War I game on U-boats is pretty unique in our hobby, but the one with the level of historical detail melded with the playable system from the Hunters, it's a pretty unique game, and that's why it's frankly selling so well, or has been selling so well. It's a unique, Hey,
World War I is hot right now, right? It's I hope anyway, with the Zeppelin Raider coming out. But,
and then Night Fighter Ace, right? What's that about? Night Fighter Ace you did back, that's another solitaire game, right?
yeah, hey, now I did do a 2-player game once. But yeah,
That's
Night
right,
Fighter Ace.
We're
Actually, Night Fighter Ace is kind of like my love child. I really thought it was just, I liked the way that I was able to take the Hunter system, but it doesn't feel like you're, flying a U-boat. I mean, the system was altered to fit, the issues of fighting at night against the British bomber streams. And even though you have the same situation where you've got, basically you're in charge of a weapon system and your enemy is sort of one track. I mean, the bomber stream went in and went for their target, sort of like the convoys were coming across and the U-boats were hunting them. Well, in Night Fighter Ace, you got that one night fighter, and but I just liked the way that I was able to update and modify the system, and it still worked. It's just a lot of fans for Night Fighter Ace. It's been very gratifying.
So let's switch gears from solitaire, largely designed as solitaire solo game experiences, to your most recent release that's been out a few months. Let's talk a little bit about your first 2-player game from Compass, Pacific Tide. Tell everybody a little bit about Pacific Tide, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, well, great friend of mine, Mitch Ledford, came up with this, just I thought was a really awesome card rebuy system. I mean, you have a lot of games where, you got your deck of cards, and even some games where they're separated by years. But in Pacific Tide, we took the whole Pacific War. I mean, the objective was to make a game where you could do the whole Pacific War at a strategic level, but it didn't take you 80 hours. Or didn't have 4 maps and 5,000 counters and oh my God, So we wanted to have something that you could play in the evening, and you absolutely can. And so I met that design goal pretty well, I thought. But the card rebuy system, what makes it so neat is it works really well for a strategic situation where you have production. So what you do with your build points is you rebuy the previous year's cards that you need or think you need, and then whatever the current year is, you get those cards for free. So it's real strategic. I mean, each turn is a year. I mean, it doesn't get more strategic than that. But
all right. Well, listen,
it's just a neat game. All right, moving on.
So Pacific Tide's doing really well. I would just tell people it's definitely designed as a 2-player game, which again is Greg's first foray with a published design for 2-player, which is exciting.
New territory for me, but it worked out.
Yeah, it worked out well. And we did add a solitaire bot system to it. So you came up with a nice system for anybody who wants to go solo. Even if you maybe just a prep of the game before you play a 2-player, you can play
the funny thing about the bot was it really I learned a lot about bots from that experience, mainly from the viewpoint of sometimes a little bit that less is more to a degree. In other words, I mean, people aren't computers. If the bot is so intricate and convoluted and complicated that it's more trouble than it's worth, I mean, I tried to mix my bot with some degree of automation, like depending on the situation, it'll do A, B, or C, but I also tried to put in general guidance. So you still have to give yourself a good game, but at least you have bot guidance to sort of help you along. So it actually has gotten pretty good reviews, the bot. I was I was pleasantly pleased with that part of it.
Well, Greg, you need to say hello and thank you to Richard Whitmer. He just posted that he's played Pacific Tide face-to-face multiple times, and he loves it.
Oh, cool. Well, thanks,
just wanted to share that with you. I've got a question from Martin Svensson, but I'm going to save that for after we talk about Zeppelin Raider. He has a question for you, but I want to hold it.
Yeah, Gothas. Well, I don't know.
We'll come back to it. Zeppelin Raider. I'm actually sharing my screen right now, just showing the box cover image for Zeppelin Raider. So I know there's been, there have been a few Zeppelin games done. I know Luftschiff from Sierra Madre Games by Phil Eklund was done. I know
not many.
S&T Magazine Strategy and Tactics, I believe, had one.
Yeah, they did.
I think also Dana Lombardi has been working on a game, very similar title, that's got some cards in it, meant to be a pretty quick pickup style game. So just a few pages of rules, maybe 3 or 4. I think I saw a prototype of it at Consum World Expo. So not many Zeppelin games out there, but here we go. So here's our release for tomorrow. Zeppelin Raider. So let's talk about Zeppelin Raider. And while you're talking, I'm going to start sharing some of the components to the game.
All right. Well, I would say that it's a grossly underrepresented topic, really. I mean, it was just the effort that the Germans put into the Zeppelins is just stunning. I mean, there was like 100 of them, and you know, not just Navy. I focused the game on the naval side. There were Army Zeppelins as well, but I went with just the naval to try to sort of keep it manageable to a degree. We've got the 8 different major classes of Zeppelin. You can see the back of the box here.
Yep, back of the box. I'm showing the back of the box, and I want to give kudos to Olivier Revenue. I worked with him for the first time, and
gorgeous.
I think he caught the aesthetic feel we were looking for World War I Zeppelins. I think when you see some of the components I'm going to show here, I think he really caught, you know, that mood.
Well, you got that period feel to it. Yes, absolutely.
So tell the story about what shocked me. I didn't know this. Shows maybe I don't read enough history books, I guess. But tell me about why the mortality rate for the Zeppelin commandants was so high. There was something about them where they couldn't, I guess, get out of a pickle so easily, right? Could you explain what that's about?
It really was an arms race from the viewpoint of when they started, they lost a couple Zeppelins. They actually had a Zeppelin, a guy dropped some darts on it from above. They were called Rankin darts, and they penetrated in. And once they realized that the major threat to their existence was aircraft, not anti-aircraft fire per se. I mean, they had several Zeppelins hit by AA, and they would, you know, kind of limped home kind of thing. One of them crashed in the water, but a couple of them. But the point is that it was this arms race. And so there's, we got to get ahead of the British aircraft ceiling. So they came up with their newer classes of Zeppelins. Well, you see this S-class is called the Height Climber. That was the name of it, or nickname for the class. So they got higher, and then the British would have better airplanes, and so then the Zeppelins had to go higher still. But really the main issue was once the British figured out that they thought at first that incendiary ammo wouldn't work because there's no oxygen inside the cells. But when they realized that, it would work really well because the gas, as it leaked out into the body of the Zeppelin, then an explosive shell or just a spark or another incendiary round would set the whole thing off. And once they figured out that the incendiary/explosive was the way to go, it just was bad. So they started losing a lot of Zeppelins, and so the bottom line is altitude is life, and you don't want to get caught at low altitude. But there's a very interesting arms race going on as they kept trying to go higher and higher.
And I know you always have a narrative around gameplay that's around your crew. You're a commander, but you also have your crew. So I'm showing the commandant status and skill chart right now, and anybody familiar with your system, they're
probably too much time wasted in college playing Dungeons and Dragons and World of Warcraft. I've always felt that there's a important part to a design is to have a sort of that role-playing aspect where you actually kind of care. There are some times in a war game, I know everybody's been in this kind of war game, where it's turn 10, and you don't care if you lose 37 divisions are slaughtered as long as you take the 1 victory point X. And so that always bothers, like, well, we don't care what casualties we take as long as we, so in my games, I actually try to make it where there's a little bit of the human aspect, or you actually care a little bit about your guy. This is a nice graphic. These are the commandant cards. So you can actually replay the career here of one of what I like to call the top 8 Zeppelin commanders.
Exactly. Yeah. So in your other titles, you have done these optional, adding more historical flavor to the game, of course. Where since you're playing the role of the commandant, well, what was it like historically? Historically, how can I compare? Can I recreate that history of these top commandants? And that's a nice touch, That
and some of them have little game abilities, which are actually based on something that actually happened to them historically.
Exactly.
For example, Bachholt automatically goes to Africa.
There we
which
go.
is
Okay.
which is
Yep.
another long
Automatically goes to
story.
Africa for a mission in November of 1917. There
Yeah.
you go.
Breithaupt, for example, his crew is I don't know what.
-1. Oh, that's a benefit though, right? Is that a
Yeah, I'm
benefit?
not. I
Or
don't
did,
remember. I don't remember why he gets that. It might be because he was a son of a mechanic or something like that. I forget the
right,
historical detail,
he
but
had
there was
leverage.
something like that happened. Kola, for
Leverage.
example, you see his crew is +1 to engine repair in snow weather. Basically, he had a problem in a snowstorm. But yeah. So anyway, I try to have the little game abilities match some historical aspect to that actual commander. But yeah, those are the top 8 guys, and
Yeah.
the ships they commanded.
And of course, we have patrol maps, which I think are always so popular. You can visualize what's happening with your Zeppelin, with your
Yeah,
mission. Actually,
you
can
know,
you talk about the missions? Can you talk real quick? I know we're going to run short on time here, but
sure.
the types of
Well,
missions as a Zeppelin commandant.
well, you can see you're either scouting in the North Sea looking for British ships,
Okay.
which was sort of I mean, it was the naval, these are naval Zeppelins, so that was one of their main goals, but they sort of morphed into more of a strategic bombing force, basically, because that became less of the scouting aspect, except around Jutland, which of course they screwed that up and didn't.
Yeah.
They missed the boat on Jutland as far as they didn't find the fleet, but they sort of morphed into the strategic bombing force because they were just wrapped around their commander. Peter Strasser was just bent on, we can take it to England
Yeah.
and burn London to the ground, which of course was, with the technology they have, was a pretty wild overstatement of capabilities, but they tried. So you have a lot of bombing missions. You also have that.
I've got to share this one because I didn't know this until you told me. Oh, by the way, there were missions near, Africa, and I'm like, whoa, or Middle East.
Yeah, no,
I'm like, what? World
I
War One,
I
Germans, and
I kind
what's
of
the story behind that one?
I kind of broke my own rule of keep a game manageable and focus on what you want to focus on, but and I broke that rule because this was just too cool not to have in the game. But
Very
they
funny.
actually sent a Zeppelin to try to resupply the Germans in East Africa. So, and
Yeah.
it actually got down way below, way down there to the bottom of the map. They actually got down there before they got recalled because the
Oh, wow.
landing zone was, yeah, because of time delays, they basically missed the boat. So they were too late to do the resupply. So they turned around and went all the way back. And for a long time, it held the record of the longest Zeppelin flight. It was about 100 hours and change. But they were based out of Jamboli in Bulgaria. And Strasser wanted it brought back to Northern Europe, but they ended up actually keeping it in Jamboli and running bombing missions in the Med. So they bombed Malta, Naples, and Ceuta Bay and Port Said. And
Amazing.
they eventually got either anti-aircraft or lightning set them on fire, and down they went near Malta, I believe.
So tell me this. How much did you know about the naval airships in World War One, and what was the biggest design challenge that you felt you overcame during the process of designing this game?
Yeah, I didn't know jack about these other than Led Zeppelin's a band. That's about all I knew about Zeppelins.
That's promising. That's giving a lot of people a lot of confidence right now in this game.
No, that was before.
Better mention your bibliography now before we lose.
Oh yeah, well that was before I got a hold of
research.
Douglas Robinson's book, The Zeppelin in Combat. I know this Australian captain, and he said, you know what, Paul O'Grady, by the way, is his name.
Paul O'Grady. Yep, want to give him credit. Paul
Captain,
O'Grady.
Royal Australian Navy, and he said, you know what, you should take the Hunters and do a Zeppelin game. And I'm like, yeah, all right, why not? And then the more I started researching, I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. They did all this, and they had 100 Zeppelins, and they went down to Africa. And I just thought, wow, this is going to be neat. So the more I researched it, I realized this game really is more about fighting the elements and the weather and your own unreliable engines more as much as it is about bombing England.
Yeah.
And so you've got a lot of, you're going to have a lot of tense moments when your engines are breaking down. I mean, because you could float off the map.
Yeah.
That's the end of your career. So I put in some decisions to be made as far as, you can try to buy skills that will allow you, like, you can upgrade your engineer to make them a mechanical genius, which, by the way, I highly recommend.
That was my last question for you about the design, just to help people out, because we're going to start shipping tomorrow. So let's do this lightning round. What's the best beginning strategy for a new player of this game? I'm playing it for the first or second time. I want to do well, have some good results. What tips would you give me as the designer? What should I keep in mind?
I think what you need to do is have a survival mindset. I think
survival mindset?
A survival mindset. In so much that you might want to buy those skills that will help keep you alive, rather than offensive skills like, oh, I want to buy the skill that helps me bomb better. No, you probably want to buy a skill that allows you to stay alive. Maybe navigation. There's different skills. Some are offensive, some are defensive. And I'd say as a first time player,
yeah.
The other thing is, when we got back to design challenge, the biggest challenge in one sentence was lift. I realized this game had to center around lift.
Lift of the dirigible.
Yeah.
Lift. Okay.
Lift as in, you've got so much helium and fuel, your gas cells and your ballast, and you have to balance. You have to decide when to go up, and you have to automatic venting occurs, and you don't want to be caught at low altitude, but you need to maintain a reserve of ballast for emergencies like getting shot by an aircraft fire. So, the game really has to revolve around lift. And when you're playing it, your decisions you make should always be towards survival. Keep the ship high out and keep it alive. And
good tip. That's a good tip. So really, it is about survivability and you just gave the tip on how you think one can survive. Keep a high altitude.
As high as you can and still maintain a reserve. Okay. But there's going to be times when things are going to happen where you're going to have to maybe even dump fuel over. There's an emergency jettison rule where you dump all the heavy crap overboard, and machine guns or whatever. It's a different feeling. It's almost like you're navigating this ship and keeping the airship in the air, and managing your ballast and your fuel and your weight is as important as getting there and bombing, really.
Gotcha.
But the thing is you've got to. It's not really complicated. I mean, you don't have to have a degree in aerodynamics to play.
Well, that's a great segue. I wanted to close by showing the actual rules. I'm going to preview the rules real quickly, and then we're going to post the rules tomorrow, because whenever we officially release a product at Compass, we'll go ahead and post the PDF of the final rules.
And I cheated, and they're already up tonight on BGG.
There you go. That's fine. So go to BGG. So just to share with everybody, these are a bit of a lighter. I'd say it's about 10 to 15% lighter, at least, than Night Fighter Ace. So it is a bit of a lighter. I'll just go through the pages here.
I mean, you don't have to screw with radars, and it's a little easier, but.
So we've got here again. There's just 24 pages total. It's a 24-page booklet, but you can see that the rules sort of top out at page 21 with optional rules, but we do have some illustrations, as people will see here. So it's a lighter. To me, it's a little bit of a lighter set of rules, like lighter than Raiders of the Deep, lighter than Night Fighter Ace by a smidge. I would say a safe smidge. So just to give people a quick idea here, I'm going to just navigate here. So again, going through the markers of the game, the game components, the inventory, the log sheet, how the log sheet is used. Here also the displays, the Zeppelin displays themselves, and how they are used or set up for play, and it's all numbered where things go at start. So a very, very nice job by Chad I want to commend Chad Jensen, who did the rules layout for us. He did a wonderful job. So again, a lot of good illustrations. Then going through the sequence of play, getting through what you talked about, the venting, gas cells, weather impact, all the things we were mentioning, but you don't have to be an engineer, but it does get into those aspects of the game. And again, pretty straightforward set of rules here. We're already pretty much wrapping it up and then getting into the crew advancement, promotion, and awards, which really gets into the strong narrative of all your solitaire designs. Here we're getting into the awards themselves and some of the prizes you mentioned about getting perhaps reassignment to a newer airship or a base change. And then, of course, the African, the mission to Africa is covered here, which is wonderful. And some optional rules like those 8 commandant cards you see here at the end. So overall, and then we've got the bibliography, brief designer notes, and then, of course, the counter sheet. And then what I always like to do is provide a good, robust rules index on the back. But again, a pretty light, to me, a little bit lighter on the rules, which is great. I think people will be able to jump in pretty fast. And I know Joel Toppin's beginning work on the Vassal module for Zeppelin Raiders. So I think folks will be able to go from board game to online mode fairly quickly in the next few weeks here. So I'm looking forward to hearing. I'm very excited when we start shipping tomorrow, when people start receiving it, what they think of the components, the artwork, the system, and how it plays, and the narrative it does. And I think the bibliography you mentioned 1 or 2 books were wonderful here, like the Zeppelin in Combat, or the actual personal account, which is Zeppelin, the story of lighter than aircraft. So some very good read. Only 1 or 2 main books really to jump into to really set up to improve the narrative of the game.
Which normally I have a pretty huge bibliography for my games. But really, that first book, The Zeppelin in Combat, it is the absolute Bible if you have any interest in Zeppelins at all, gotta get this book. It is so good. I mean, it's just, it has operational history. It has charts and tables and specifics on every single Zeppelin. It's just amazing. But I can't recommend that one highly enough.
All right, and then for Martin, just so for the others, as a courtesy, so they know what Martin's question was. I know you answered it already online, but Martin, thank you, Martin Svensson, for pre-ordering Zeppelin and saying the game looks great. Thank you so much. And he asked you, Greg, have you considered doing a World War I air game covering the German giant bomber, example Gotha?
I had not previously thought of it, so I'll have to give you credit if I ever do it. It's a thought. I'll have to look into it. I mean, I know they did. You could argue, I guess I'd say the Zeppelin effort was the first strategic bombing campaign, but the Gotha effort was probably the second strategic bombing campaign. But it's just amazing to me those Gothas were so huge, and that they sent them to England. It's like insane. Anyway, it's a thought. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay, great. Well, listen, you've been busy. You've been designing a lot of games, and it's been great to see them coming out and getting published fairly quickly. Let's talk about what you've got coming up. So I'd be remiss in not mentioning that. So I believe we have Interceptor Ace is coming up, which is can you let people know what Interceptor Ace is all about?
Just finished the counters, and by the way, John, I just did the final proof of the aircraft mats, except for the artwork, but the actual layout is good. Interceptor Ace is basically, I don't know if I could call it B-17 Queen of the Skies in reverse, but you're in command of a single day fighter. So it's a sequel to Night Fighter Ace, but instead of being in a German night fighter, you're in a German day fighter. I've got, I think there's like 13 versions of Focke-Wulf 190, 11 or 12 versions of the BF 109. There's 4 BF 110s, and there's 2 ME 410 models. But basically, it's the same drill, except now you're going after B-17s, sometimes B-24s. A lot of people have said, well, this is the same thing as Skies Above the Reich. And the answer is, it's the same topic, but it's not really, it's kind of apples and oranges. Jeremy White's superb game, by the way. Kudos to Jeremy. He's on a squadron of he's on a group of aircraft. in my game is focused on a single pilot and his wingman, and you kind of grow the story around that pilot. So it's, but other than that, there are some similarities to Night Fighter Ace. I mean, the basic overall kind of engine and flipping cards. But the neat kind of thing was because of the American escorts and also sometimes British fighters, I had to develop a more robust fighter versus fighter engine, because we didn't really have that Night Fighter Ace.
Right.
Just sometimes with the Mosquitoes, but that was all kind of one-sided usually. So what I did was I kind of modified Down in Flames. I can thank Mike Lamb for that. He motivated me after all these years. I said, oh, you know what? We'll have the Down in Flames. You know, you're either advantaged or disadvantaged or tailing the guy, and I'll use that system. And I'll use the same card deck I'm using against the Bombers, and I was able to put a different section for fighter against fighter. Voila! And it's fun. It works out pretty nice. And you have some tactical decisions to make as far as, do you flip a card, ask for your wingman to help, or do you use a standard maneuver you can choose from, like a tight turn or barrel roll? So it's kind of a neat little, I think it's fun. I don't know, the testers have really liked it, so that's always a good sign.
Oh, we're looking forward to that, but we're going to all
Oh, and there's 30 different aircraft to choose from.
30 different aircraft. Good to mention, yeah. Good, rich assortment of aircraft. So
yes.
Well, I think that the attention is definitely going to center and focus on Zeppelin Raider, since it's shipping starting tomorrow. So I want to thank you again for that design. I want to thank you for answering questions and talking to us tonight about Zeppelin Raider and what it's all about. So I think everybody's excited to get it in a few days. The mailman will hopefully be delivering in a few days. And we're going to hold off talking about future projects because we got a time constraint. We got to leave some exciting news for a different episode. Yeah. So we got to save that for a later episode for sure. But I'm excited about some other things that are cooking, if you will. But we'll save that for another time. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, John. Thank you so much
for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Take care. All righty. So I'm going to go ahead here real quickly, and let's just go ahead and. All right. So what I'd like to do next is want to get to our next pre-order, but before I do, I'd actually like to double down and introduce to you all another special guest. So not just one, we have two special guests for tonight. So again, I want to thank Gregory Smith, who was able to join us, and now I'd like to welcome Adam Starkweather for being here. So Adam, I think I see you there. It's a pleasure to see you tonight.
Hey, John. Good to see you again.
And I'm sorry, I know you're East Coast time, and Greg's, I think Greg's.
And my wife's a teacher. We get up early around here.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I apologize for that. It's saving that pre-order. We got to save that pre-order for last. So people are starting to get an idea of what's coming. So what I want to do is I want to start with a tease. So before we get to the pre-order announcement, I do want to take a moment to talk about something that was recently released. So let me go there now. We can talk a little bit about Vietnam. I thought we could talk about Vietnam Rumor of War. So let me go to that product page now, just so I can share my screen. Where did it go? Now I lost my screen. Here it goes. Okay, I'm bringing it back. So let me do that real quickly. And here we are, Vietnam Rumor of War. This literally just shipped out. I think people started receiving it a week or two ago.
Yep, last week.
So real excited. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the second game in the operational scale system, the first one being Korea Fire and Ice. Could you give us a quick elevator pitch, just the background on Vietnam Rumor of War, if you would?
Well, it uses the OSS system, although but the essential concept of OSS is to sort of make big stupid games. Vietnam is a complicated topic. So it's not quite as simple as, let's say, Korea would be, but I'm pretty happy with how it all came out. It's pretty. I'm having trouble even focusing on what exactly to talk about.
Well, I was going to say you had Korea, like you mentioned, Korea came out first. Did the system evolve? Like since you had Korea already out, And I'm going to cut this off at the pass. People are asking about when's the living rules coming for Korea. I know we're working on them. We're waiting for the the layout person to finish. So we are going to be planning to release living rules for Korea because people have been asking for that. But I'm curious myself.
Yeah, I do want to say, I mean, I apologize to everyone.
Being involved in the system.
But Korea is some of the best work I've ever done. Please be patient, and if you're waiting on the rules, when it's ready for you, please try it. The system is different. I don't think it's so different as to become alien, but there's a lot of high play game value in it, and yet it still maintains a strong historical base. You'll see in Vietnam, you'll be rescuing POWs. You'll be going downtown with F4s, fighting Colonel Toom. Sam shoot off at you. You'll land in the Hanoi Hilton. That stuff's all in there. And yet I think it's a pretty simple format. So I'm pretty proud of the design.
Oh, that's great. And then could you mention or remind me again, when you introduced the operational scale system, I think you said there were 1 or 2 published designs in the past that you leveraged.
I did. It's actually based on Road to the Rhine was my initial concept. And then it started to morph into some sort of stepchild of Road to the Rhine, an old game I made called A Victory Complete. But, you know, it didn't quite fit in. It was square peg, round hole, and it became its own thing. I'm not sure it's got a lot left in there other than that was the original concept I ran with, and it's sort of morphed a bit. So it's a lot different than those games now.
And then for Vietnam, are there like multiple scenarios? Because I think there's several maps. So I know I believe it's
3 maps. 4 scenarios.
Oh, 4 scenarios. Okay.
One of which uses 2 maps, but the other 3 use 3 maps.
Okay.
But they're fast plays, at least most of them are. There's Eastertide, the Easter Offensive in 1972, and Tet, which is short and crowded, and A Year in I Corps, which is nice and small because it's the first year of the war, and then the campaign game.
Great. What would you say for doing Vietnam as a topic? What was your biggest designer challenge? What do you feel you have to spend the most energy on to figure out as far as what you were happy with in the end? For this?
Well, I started being concerned about it still being a sore spot for America, and how to deal with that as an issue in a game. Games are like books; they're your perspective as an author, and where I wanted to go with it. I was concerned about that to start with. But to be honest, as the event is farther and farther away, it became more historical than I thought it would be, and the game is somewhat immersive. I have a lot of events that happened in the reinforcement chart, stuff that has nothing to do with the war that you're playing, but to give you background about what's happening. And I think for anyone who's interested and reads it, my comments are more succinctly mentioned in the campaign game.
Okay.
In the introduction, if you have the game. But I'm just truly grateful to those who served, and a lot of the cynicism and anger about the war has subsided in our culture. And for that, I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for the service of those, and we can appreciate them more now than perhaps we ever could before.
Well, I appreciate it. That's a heartfelt comment. Thanks for sharing your feelings about that. And I can definitely understand where you're coming from there. And I want to commend you, too. I think, a very popular game has been Vietnam by Victory Games, but quite complex, a lot of layers to it, a lot of complexities. People love it. But when it comes to, like you said, sort of at the beginning, sort of a dumb large game, you're just sort of, I just want something that's playable, that's, sexy, large, a lot going on, but not a thesis either.
Right, although Vietnam is still very complicated.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you've accomplished here. I've seen people have posted a lot of nice pics. I've seen social media. A lot of people have been posting, they've been setting up the whole game, the 3 maps, and one person was, doing the initial deployments and getting all excited. So, people sense, oh, this looks like, I think the overriding comment, oh, this looks really playable. Like this is a game that's going to play fairly quickly compared to some other stuff out there, but it's nice and big too. which is
well, I mean, I wouldn't put it in no trumpets, no drums kind of simplicity. It's a little bit more than that.
Yep.
The most common comment that I'm getting so far is its uniqueness, how it's different and spans the strategic operational ladder in an interesting sort of way. So give it a shot. Have a look at the rules. I'm pretty
all
proud
right.
of it.
Sounds good. Well, listen, people are pulling at me here because I'm teasing everybody because I haven't introduced a main headliner reason. I mean, Vietnam's reason enough, I think, because it's such a new release. It's not even a month out yet. But we do have some other orders of business to attend to. So I'm sharing my screen, and I think I need to do that now. So I'm going to go ahead and go back here for a moment to the pre-order page. This is where I'm going to pull this up from because it should be active now. So for the first time tonight, we should have it. So let's.
Yay! I know that game.
Oh, you know what? We people aren't going to be able to pre-order it. Unfortunately, we're waiting for the pre-order button. So sort of an advanced tease. So unfortunately, the pre-order button is not live yet. But knowing how things operate, we're going to have it really quickly. So anybody looking to pre-order this game, you know where to find the page. We're going to go through the page now, and then hopefully tomorrow you can click the that pre-order and pay later option, which is pretty popular. So let's talk about an introduction to this. Looks like a series, so I'm getting excited already. I like the name of it, Doomsday Project.
Yeah, it's like a sub-series of OSS. So it's going to cover 1985, World War III, and while it never happened in real life, it's happened on our tabletops many times. So it's sort of part of our history. I spent an enormous amount of my youth at SBI playing all these World War III games, and a very special place in my heart. So I'm really happy to be able to do this. This will use the OSS system. You'll finally get some really serious air combat. It had always been one-sided until now. So but the first game is going to be on Germany. It's 3 maps once again. And then I'll do taking a page from Chadwick's Third World War. There'll be a Persian Gulf. There'll be a Norwegian game. There'll be a Far East game.
Wow, wonderful.
The Balkans game. I'll also add in a strategic World War III missile kind of thing. Real cheery stuff, but it goes with the name. And a big naval game, sort of sea power in the state kind of thing.
That's great.
So it's going to go into a lot of these places. Your Third World War is making me stagger it a little bit more than I would have otherwise, but that's cool. But we'll do this one first.
Yeah.
And of course you'll be able to,
and then
put together if you want to.
Yeah, and then I think the release date we're hoping to release in Q4 of this year, and
towards the end of the year.
Towards the end of the year, which is that's pretty darn fast. I mean, this is going to be a really exciting, great first chapter here on Battle for Germany. Very exciting, and I think to juxtapose this with the one everybody knows about already, Third World War series, it's great to have multiple offerings on the same topic. And
I do want to mention Shane Logan's my artist for this. It's my first time working with him, and I'm pretty pleased with what he's done so far. So.
All right, well, let's give props to Shane Logan then. I know he's done quite a bit of work. If you look him up on Board Game Geek, you can look him up as an artist and see what projects he's done. He's done some great work. And also in the future, I know we'll show more artwork for Doomsday as the project moves along. And actually what's further along, I'm actually working with Shane as well on the Tank Leader series, which was from John Hill. So right now we're doing Tank Leader Eastern Front. And
my favorite games of all time, Tank Leader.
Yeah, so we've got Shane. Shane's artistic talents are starting to already pay off dividends, I think. People are really excited about the work he's done on the maps and the counters and the formation and the cards, which goes back. But again, that's a different game for a different time. But where did you get the idea? So I always like to try to pick your brain because you're very talented. You've done all sorts of different designs and topics. But when did this sort of come into being as far as the inception of the idea? I want to do something that became the Doomsday Project series.
I've always been interested in how games mate together, how different theaters that are happening at the same time. That's why, like my Mariana's quadrilogy, seeing it all together and how they all influence each other. And also, I'm making a game called Fold-A-Gap, which will cover a small portion of that. And it gets sort of me thoroughly immersed. So I'll do Fulda Gap and Doomsday, Germany. And at the same time, I'll do Arab Israeli and OSS, and I'll do Chinese Farm, which I have to do in 2020. So, it gives me a broader perspective. And I enjoy the lower scale, let's say, in Third World War, the Norwegian campaign, where you get different kinds of forces and smaller level forces versus the big theater of Germany.
Yeah, this is great. Now the operational skill system's really starting to get some legs behind it now with Korea, Vietnam last month or earlier this month, and now Doomsday Project and future projects as well. And then part of this series. I mean, it's really nice to see, this operational scale system being applied to different genres of campaigns in history. Or even alternate history, what could have been. So it's very exciting news. Well, I don't want to hold
you showing Vietnam off. I'm sure I'll be playing it in Montreal. You'll be there, and I'll
be there at Montreal. I'm very happy to be joining you there, Adam, at Stack Academy in a few months, so not far from now. And that sounds great. That sounds like we're going to have a fun time there. You're going to have Vietnam there. That's awesome. That's great news. That's fun. It's going to be a fun trip. So
it's a good con. You'll have a good time.
And can you share with us maybe just a little bit behind the scenes, give us a little morsel of maybe some other things you're working on or working with others on? I know there's a company scale system. I know Ross Martell's working on combat, and you're facilitating that, helping.
That's right. Combat's coming soon.
Could you share with us, just give us something to dream about tonight, since it's so late? So what else are you working on?
Let's see, Little Land and Fulda Gap and Doomsday. And I also have starting a project. It's something that you saw at, I think it was WBC, of a Gettysburg game.
Yes. Yes.
Homage to Jim Murphy.
Wonderful. I'm really excited personally about that one. That's awesome. So if people don't know about that, we'll definitely, when that happens, when it's time to talk more details about that one, that's going to be a really interesting discussion. I'm really excited about that. You're working on so many great projects right now. I think that's fantastic. But again, kudos to you for Vietnam. Congratulations on your Vietnam design.
Thank you.
And we'll see a lot of play of that. And then, of course, in Montreal, we'll get some play of that as well. Looking forward to that. And then all these many projects, too many to count right now, that you're working on. So I think that translates to we'll see you again in another future broadcast.
Yes.
To talk about something else.
Oh, and by the way, I promised Ken Dingley an Ancients game. So if people are listening and you want to see an Ancients game, give me thoughts, give me ideas of what you'd like to see.
So would it be like a big dumb form? Could it be a big?
It'd be something new. So it could be whatever people want to see.
Wow, that's interesting.
There was an Italian
game. There was like a four-map Italian game on Kanai, I think Kanai, that was done in Italy years ago. That was 4 maps. I mean, since you're doing big games.
Yeah, I tend to make them big. It's a compensation issue,
So I'm going to throw that one out maybe. But no, that's exciting. So that's okay, Ancient. So that would be very interesting. I'd love to see something on that.
Belisarius has, and Justinian, that's got some... it's got my eye on it a little bit. I don't think there's a comprehensive Justinian game out there. And I'd like to make something. But anyway, if people want to see something.
That sounds good. Well, listen, Adam, I know you've stayed up late tonight to be here. And I want to thank you so much. I'm really excited about the Doomsday Project. I know people will be excited that, when they can actually hit the pre-order button so they can go ahead and pre-order it. So that should start tomorrow. So I'm really eager. I know this is going to do really well, be a really enjoyable game, and much like Vietnam is going to be enjoyed.
Yeah, so, try Vietnam. I'm really proud of it.
Vietnam looks great. And again, the rules for Vietnam are actually, those are posted. I've been showing those here online, but you can get to the Vietnam rules from our product page. You can just download the PDF directly or just see it in this viewer right here. So again, we always make the rules and everything available once these games ship. So definitely worth checking out. I think we also today, there was just some minor errata that we've surfaced that we've already handled. So we've got an errata sheet just to clarify a few things to help folks out. It's less than a page right now. So
I don't know how to spell Calvary.
There we go. So that's downloadable right now from the site. So everybody should have what they need. And again, it was a real pleasure talking with you. You've been very busy, very active, and a lot of your releases have been coming out. So we look forward to more and more from you.
Thank you, John. See you in Montreal. Happy opening day.
Thank you so much, and have a good night, Adam. Thank you for joining us tonight. So I want to thank Adam again for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and just share one last thing I'd be remiss in mentioning from our website is, again, that we've got our Expo 2019 during Veterans Day weekend, November 8th through the 11th. Again, just hit on the Expo 2019 link. We've got quite a few people signed up already. It's quite early, of course. We're talking November, but we're at the same facility, but twice the space. We've doubled our space for Compass Games Expo at the Red Lion Hotel in Cromwell. We've got actually about 22 people that have pre-registered early already. We'll have special events. I know we'll have Randy Hellers will be doing a tournament on Bitter Woods, for example. And we'll have many special events planned. But you can see the sign-up sheet right here. I've highlighted some of the initial special events that I know we'll be doing. We'll have the Monster Game on the Great Rebellion, American Civil War by Donald Johnson. We'll have a play test for the Pacific based on the War series of games by Ernie Copley. And we'll be adding more items. You notice here also Fortress Europa. That will be, of course, released shortly in a few months. And that will be, that will already have shipped by the time we get around the Compass Games Expo. So again, you can play any games from any publisher you want. It's an open play format. Just where Compass were hosting it and had a great time. Had about 120. Just to give you an idea, this is early in the registration process. We actually had about 120 people, including walk-ins last year for our very first year. So very, very exciting indeed. So we're really excited about the event. And then as far as somebody's asking, Joel's asking, everything looks great. Do you worry about having too many games in the pipeline? You know what? It keeps me off the street, Joel. What can I say? It's sort of like a dream come true in a way, because I didn't think, maybe share a personal story. I didn't think a year or two ago I'd be able to make a play at doing something full time as far as related to the hobby, so it's been a real pleasure. I don't think I've been aged at all. I think I had more gray hair a little over a year or two ago when I was suffering from corporate burnout, because I've put in my 30 plus years of the corporate world. But it's a real treat being part of this hobby, going back to Consom World, the Consom World Forum, and not just speaking about myself, just, everybody we've met in the hobby. It's such a pleasure working with everybody. What happens when you have so many projects, what happens is, some projects will have a natural progression of how they develop. Some might go very fast. Maybe the designs, maybe it's from an outside designer and the design's basically done and we all agree it doesn't really need much else, and they go straight to the artwork. So that can happen. Or it could be the opposite. It could be a brand new design, new system, first-time designer. And we do welcome first-time designers, absolutely. So that's something, to keep in mind as well, that we do that. So that helps build the pipeline. So as far as what I'd like to contribute to Compass, it's really looking at a nice mix of games. I've always been a strong proponent that games, even popular games from the past, can be much improved with a level of detail placed on them. And also, to be fair, give the designer a second chance, and also give gamers like you a second chance. Everybody's always posted comments about what they liked about a game or what could have been better. Even if you really enjoyed the game, there's little things that could have been better. And I take that as a really interesting challenge as a sort of a project person. How can we make a game better? Much like I showed Fortress Europa today, and working with Randy Heller, who was, he's a godsend because he's such an expert on the game, but it still keeps me in that mode, or even motivates me more the more somebody's experienced, or usually we have multiple project team members per project. We get everybody together and we try to come up, how do we make the game better? And we don't talk about how do we change the game so we can sell a new edition. That's not even in the discussion whatsoever. It's always about what can we do to make the game better, smarter, etc. What can we learn from you, from what people have posted online, just general play experiences. So the pipeline, sure, maybe the pipeline's big, but you need a big pipeline because projects can be delayed. So Third World War series, which is one of my projects, has been delayed quite a bit because of, frankly, it's a very large project and we need an artist that can get through all the work. And we've had some challenges and we've scuffed our knees a bit in finding the right talent to actually get traction made on a very big project like that. But we do have a new artist that's starting next month on Third World War series, and best news of all is he's going into retirement officially in about tomorrow. So he's actually going to have time to actually do all the graphics for 6 maps and 8-9 counter sheets and a gazillion player aid cards, because Third World War series, it's 4 games in one box. So when you have a big pipeline, I don't worry about it actually. I think I'd be more worried about if I didn't have a big pipeline. Because if we had a small pipeline at Compass, it gets challenging if a few games need more time. We don't want to rush a game through development, through production. We'd rather take the time a game needs. And the nice thing about having a big project pipeline is at both ends of the spectrum, one that's almost ready, that is going through printers or going through the artists. We have quite a few games there, over 10 games in that category right now. But then we've got games that are still going through the project team phase of just being talked about, how they can be made better, various things. So it's really a very wide expanse if you look at games from print to inception of, signing contracts and doing these agreements. It's a very big, broad line. But what I think I'm most proud of, what we can deliver to not just to you, the customer, but also to the designer, is you won't see games languish too long on a pre-order, mainly because we have a different business model. The pre-order system's awesome. It's great. Maybe it was the saving grace of the hobby. It's done a lot for the hobby. But, there's a little bit of a different approach at Compass. It's just a commit up front to publish a game. We don't wait for a number to hit a level. It's just to the designer, we make that commitment up front, because we have confidence in the folks we're working with, the project team members we're working with, the artists, you being understandable and helping us. We pull in you to help us with games for testing and for feedback and to improve things. So it's sort of, where it's a team effort. It's a true team effort. And we want to have a good mix of games for everybody. So, it's important. So I'd say it doesn't scare me that we have a big project pipeline, because we don't rush product through. And one of the reasons we don't rush products through is because we have a big project pipeline, if that makes sense. So having a big pipeline keeps you from rushing things or making some unfortunate mistakes or bad circumstances happening, that we can have a good cadence to our projects. But again, without doing pre-order levels, it also saves us time that we can get games to print fairly quickly, which is, I think, always a nice thing that people like Adam, we just presented tonight, Doomsday project, and the first release will be Q4 of this year, and we're already hitting Q2 in 2 days. So, it's only 2 or 3 quarters away, as long as we can stay on schedule. So and Shane's already working on the artwork for that game, Shane Logan, that Adam mentioned. So I think that's really, a positive thing. Next question from Ian Schofield. Will Compass Games have a booth at Console World Expo this year? Compass has never had a booth at Console World Expo, which, by the way, is, I want to say the date right, June 21st through the 28th, I believe. Again, around 300 people. It's a great event. If you haven't been there, please consider going to Console World Expo. Kevin Zucker will be our special guest of honor this year. We have Masahiro Yamazaki flying in from Japan again. So really going to be a great event. So Compass Games will not have a booth this year again. Traditionally, what Compass does is they have their product available, and I think Desert Fox will be there and might be selling their games, or they try to accommodate having inventory there. There might be an exception though if we have at Compass 1 or 2 releases just around the time of Expo, then we might we're talking right now at the office about shipping the newest, literally the newest releases, hitting right before Expo. If we can put them in boxes and ship them down, then absolutely we'll there will be like a booth there to pick up, just those few games. But it won't be like all the titles from Compass. It won't be anything like that. That's going to be reserved for WBC in the summer, and for, of course, our own Compass Games Expo in November. And by the way, I won't mention it because it's illegal, but there's huge savings and sales at Compass Games Expo on all the inventory, basically. I'm not going to say the discount. I'll let you figure it out, but yeah, it's going to be that way. So, between the exchange rate and shipping costs, I pretty much can't afford to buy games by mail anymore. I get it. I totally understand that costs are high. But again, I think, Ian, since you're attending, if there are games you're really looking to get, just talk to me offline. Shoot me an email like you typically do, and I'll look into what we can do for you. So if there's something you want to take back on the plane back home, let me know about that, and that's something we can definitely look at. So thanks for your question, Ian. I totally get what you're talking about there. Absolutely. So any other questions from anybody before I close out? I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you had an enjoyable time. I'm sorry for the Facebook Live group. That Facebook, yet again, we had technical difficulties, so we couldn't do a live stream on Facebook tonight, even though I tried twice. I did try 2 times, and it just, technology was not cooperating. But we will have this recorded session available tomorrow. Let's see. I want to thank you, Kevin, for your time, and I'm happy to provide you this update. I hope everybody got the update they wanted. If you had a question about another game, please feel free to shoot me an email. You can reach me at john@compassgames.com, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Of course, I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and obviously Consum World Forum the most, typically, for Compass Games support. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Again, very excited to have Gregory Smith on tonight because Zeppelin Raider ships tomorrow. Very unique topic. I think it was very beautifully rendered. The artwork's really nice. I mean, I really love the artwork, but the system's wonderful too. An interesting topic, right? And then having Adam on. Adam's so busy for Compass, and to thank him for getting Vietnam delivered recently this month, and then to have now the Doomsday project with the first game hitting before end of the year. That's pretty. I think that's pretty exciting news because that Cold War era has really taken off, guys. It's really become a real big thing that everybody's getting into marketing now. So again, I want to thank you all. It was a pleasure to be talking with you again tonight. I want to wish you a wonderful weekend. As always, I'll be back in the next 2 or 3 weeks with an update. And again, for those that enjoy Vassal, I'm already working on having a Vassal module created for Zeppelin Raider. I try to make sure we do that for all our projects. So I know that helps people that are maybe solo or don't have the table space, etc. So again, have a great night, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you again when we do our episode 25 in the next few weeks. Take care. And for those in the U.S., good luck with doing the tax return. That's always a big highlight of the year as well, I'm sure, right? Anyway, take care, everybody. And I'll talk to you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.